Good morning, everyone. It is Wednesday, November 22nd, 2017, 9 o'clock. We're in the Cinder Hearing Room for our weekly Board of Commissioners meeting. That's at 555 Court Street Northeast in Salem. We start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, so please join.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. The first item is public comment, and no one has taken advantage of that, so we'll move right into our consent calendar. Commissioner Carlson.
So, Mr. Chair, I would move today's consent calendar. Under Business Services, approve amendment number 7 to the lease agreement with Teason LLC to add $6,303.60 to lease the Health Department's Davcor location for an additional 3 months. Approve the following recommendations. Uphold pay grade for classification code number 658, IT Systems Analyst. Establish and adopt 2 classifications, Assistant Building Official and Intervention Therapist. And adjust upward pay grades for classification codes number 328, Personal Property Appraisal Technician, and Housing Authority Executive Director. Under Community Services, approve an order appointing Troy Clausen and Patrice Altenhofen to the Marion County Children and Families Commission with terms ending January 31st, 2019, and appointing Jason Myers and Marilyn Dedrick as honorary members with terms ending January 31st, 2021. Under Health, approve amendment number 2 of the intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Health Authority in the amount of $308,708 for financing of public health services. And under Treasurer's Office, approve an order distributing Oregon State Forestry timber revenues as per ORS Chapter 530.
I'll second the motion.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar as just read. Any further discussion?
No.
I don't hear any. Then all in favor say aye.
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 Aye, the motion passes. First action item this morning is to consider approval of a resolution that adopts provisions of ORS 307540 to 307548, allowing nonprofit corporation low-income housing property tax exemptions. Scott Norris is here to go over it, and either Chris Jones or Josh Graves is here.
Josh Graves.
Chris? Well,
That's Josh.
Josh.
Josh, excuse me. Anyway, welcome, and Scott, you want to start off?
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Scott Norris with the Office of Legal Counsel, ORS 307-540 to 307-548, create a process by which local governments may exempt property taxes for properties owned by nonprofit corporations which are being rented or are being held for development as low-income housing. Catholic Community Services is a nonprofit corporation which owns low-income housing and has requested the board to adopt the provisions of ORS 307-540 to 548. Attached to the proposed resolution adopting ORS 307-540 to 548 is Exhibit A, which identifies the terms that the board would be proposing. First is a definition of low income, which comes from the statute, which is for the initial year that a person occupies property subject to exemption, the income for that person is below 60% of the area mean income determined by the Oregon Housing Stability Council based on information from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And for any subsequent consecutive year that persons occupy the property, the income is at or below 80% of the area mean income. Section 2 of Exhibit A lists the eligibility criteria. Those are, first, the property is located within the unincorporated area of Marion County. The property is owned or being purchased by a corporation which is exempt from federal income tax under the Internal Revenue Code. Upon liquidation, the assets of the corporation are required to be applied first in payment of all outstanding debts of the organization, and the balance remaining is to be distributed to corporations exempt from taxation and operated exclusively for religious, charitable, scientific, literary, or educational purposes, or to the state of Oregon. Next, the property is either occupied by low-income persons or held for development as low-income housing for a period not exceeding 5 years. The property the property or portion receiving exemption, if it is occupied, must be actually and exclusively used for the charitable, for the nonprofit purposes of the organization. The exemption must be approved as provided in Section 4 of the resolution. The property was or is being purchased by a corporation. The property must have been purchased on or after July 1st of 2012. And finally, the tax levy of all taxing districts applicable to the property which have adopted the provisions of 307, 540 to 548, when combined with the tax levy of Marion County, equals 51% or more of the total combined rate of taxation on the property. The reason for that particular term is so that the exemption will apply to all taxing districts applicable to the property, which aids the assessor in administration of the exemption program. The application process is identified in Section 3, and by statute, an annual application is required for a property subject to this exemption. And those applications are required to be submitted by March 1st of the assessment year annually. Section 4 sets forth the determination process, and specifically, a determination must be made within 30 days of submission of the application. Once that is made, once a determination of eligibility is made, that is then noted on the tax roll by the assessor. Section 5 sets forth the termination requirements, which come straight from the statute, and Section 6 delegates the administrative authority over this exemption program to the assessor. So applications would be coming in to the assessor and processed by the assessor. And unless there are questions for me now, I'll turn it over.
Are there? Go ahead, Josh.
Oh, good. Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Jim Seymour, CCS Executive Director, just sends his regrets he couldn't be here today, and I'm happy to be here representing Catholic Community Services. So, as was explained, we're seeking the county's assistance in providing a mechanism where we can apply for property tax exemption for complexes that were constructed after 2012. Really, we're hopeful that this exemption will encourage other nonprofits to increase the affordable housing stock here in Marion County. There's a great need for affordable housing. Affordable housing is not a profitable venture, and so any assistance in being able to develop, maintain, and provide affordable housing, we believe, is of great interest to our community. There's a significant shortage of affordable housing for families with children, individuals in our community. People need safe, decent, affordable housing and affordable rents. We have talked to the other taxing districts, specifically the City of Salem, Salem Kaiser School District 24J, and requested their approval. Their concurrence of those two would exceed the 51% of taxes collected. And we've also been in discussion with the Transit District and Chemeketa Community College. So we're just here to seek your support in moving this forward.
I'd also like to point out, if I may, the assessor's office has developed a application form which would, for this program.
Thank you. Commissioner?
I have several questions
Go
I'd
ahead.
like to walk through. So first of all, thank you for bringing this forward. And I want to thank Jackie, Frankie, and others that have been working on this for quite some time. My notes go back, I think, almost a year, right, as we started having this conversation. So you went to, I'm looking at Josh, you went to the city of Salem and had the same discussion a few weeks back, is that correct?
We have, that's correct.
All right, and so there were some decision points, and I just want to make sure as we're looking at this that we align, so I want to just confirm this on the record. So the first decision point was the income definition that we had talked about. I guess there were a couple options.
Right.
So is the income definition that's included in the county's rendition of this exemption the same as what City of Salem just provided to you?
I believe that is the case at this point in time. We've been kind of advised through the process that the best thing to do is to get the county's approval moving forward, and then yes.
Okay, so I believe the other option that we didn't include was just a strict 60%, right? Is that correct, Scott?
That is correct.
Income at or below 60% of the area median income. And so the one that we've opted to do is for the initial year, it's the lower amount, but it can bump up in subsequent years, right?
That is correct.
Okay. So I think that would be an important thing to make sure that, and I think we've had that discussion at, we have a monthly breakfast with not a quorum of the city of Salem, but generally the mayor's there and a couple of city councilors. And I remember we talked about this a few months back. The second decision point was the maximum time for holding undeveloped property. And I think we landed on 5 years, right? So that would be another piece. I may or may not be as critical as the income definition. And I don't know, Scott, if you have any comments on that about the rationale for 5 years. I think we talked about it as the board, right? And because it could have been up to what, 10 years?
Well,
Some-
the statute gives the governing body the option of creating a limit on
Okay.
how long property can be held.
So the statute doesn't cap it at all then?
Correct.
All right, so the board said 5 years is probably the limit that we want.
That's correct.
Okay. And then we determined that the assessor would administer the program for the county. Do you know who's going to administer it? Is it the assessor also for the city, or have you had that conversation?
I'm not aware.
Okay. Scott, do you know?
I do not know. The way the statute works, application for a property that is located within city limits, the application goes to the governing body.
So that would be the city council?
So it would have to go, yeah, the city council could delegate that authority to someone within the city, if it so chose. In the case of the county here, the county board would be delegating that authority to the county assessor.
Right, but at some point, if other jurisdictions do this, because your properties are not just in unincorporated Marion County. In fact, the one in unincorporated Marion County is probably the smaller of the ones that you're concerned about, right?
That's
So you
correct.
have properties within probably Woodburn and Salem. So there would, I would think, need to be some sort of legal agreement or information sharing with the assessor's office, because ultimately it's the assessor that sends you the tax bill, correct?
Yeah. By statute, when the governing body makes a determination, it is required to inform the assessor of that
Okay.
determination, and then so that the assessor can note that on the tax roll.
So the city would have a responsibility to let the assessor know then?
That's correct.
Okay, but it could be administered within the city and then just that information passed
Correct.
over? Okay. All right, those were my questions. Any other information that I left out? In terms of the decision points that we were looking at as a board?
The only other the other two additional criteria that the board sought was the July 1st, 2012 time period for acquisition of the property, and the 51% of the taxing districts
Okay,
manifesting consent.
all right, okay. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for your presentation. And I know we've talked about this. We've had some presentations and had some discussions about this. There's a couple of little questions just for clarification. Under 2.18, Scott, I believe, I just wanted to refresh my memory, have you refresh my memory on the qualifications on the taxing districts. It says, do they have to go and get 51% of the taxing districts? I'm not clear on how that reads there, 2.18.
The way it works is taxing districts which comprise 51% or more of the total tax levy on a particular property would have to manifest consent to the provisions of ORS 307, 540 to 548 in order for the exemption to apply.
And so who's responsible for making sure and going to those taxing districts, getting a resolution, et cetera, to make sure that we get to 51%? Whose job is that? The nonprofit?
Correct. Under the terms proposed here, it would be it's an application criteria.
Okay, thank you. And then the last one, I just wanted to point out, and I know we had discussion about this under 5, section 5. This was about a pretty much what I guess you'd refer to as a clawback, that if there's found that we're really not following the rules, that we can go back up to 10 years for those back taxes.
That is correct, and that is typical in many exemption programs where there is what is referred to as a clawback to recover back taxes in the event of it is found that the property is not in fact qualify.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
I just have one minor. So you get the 51%. Do they turn in those board minutes or something to the assessor or do they just say I got them? But it seems like there ought to be more of a process than that.
There would need to be some form of documentation provided to the assessor, a copy of a resolution or other.
Nothing we need to set up here or anything like that.
No, that would be it would be a function of the action taken by the taxing district and providing that the applicant providing that information to the assessor.
And then the last I had was from Commissioner Carlson about the rates being the same. Should we address that? Should we ask that they be or more formal? Otherwise, it sounds like it's to be filled in yet.
What?
She's talking about Salem?
Yeah, or any. Well, yes, probably
Well,
that's the main.
Yeah, I guess since the city, I thought the city had actually approved it. They just considered it but didn't approve it. Is that? And if you answer, Jackie, you're going to have to come up here and introduce yourself and sit in the microphone.
It's all right. Do it.
Right.
I'm Jackie Frankie, working for Catholic Community Services.
Yeah, real close.
Can you hear me? Okay. We have met with the City Council, and the City Council voted to request staff to prepare an application and the resolution. So they've authorized the preparation of the materials, but they are not final as yet.
Okay, so in their materials, are they aligned with what? I think that's Sam's question, because based on, or Commissioner Brentano's question, based on my question.
We have asked that they be aligned because I think it's supposed to be, all the documents are supposed to be the same, but we have not, since we have not seen the documents, since they're not final, I don't know, and I don't know if they have been sent this document from Marion County, but the goal is, they have said, is to have them be aligned and be the same.
So can I just ask,
Sure.
so Scott, can we send our documents once we've approved this over to their legal counsels for their review?
Sure, I can send that over to the city attorney.
Okay, that would be great.
And I'm thinking if they choose different, there's probably a rationale, so would you let us know that? We could align back the other way.
I think there is,
But our
that would
goals to
be,
be
that
the
would be
same.
wonderful, because I think they do have to be aligned for it to work. I also do want to say that not only have we talked to several other jurisdictions, we have actually notified all of the taxing jurisdictions that this action is taking place. We wanted them all to be aware.
All right, thank you. So,
Need a motion, Mr. Chair?
please.
So I'll move that we approve a resolution adopting the provisions of ORS 307.540 to 307.548, allowing nonprofit corporation low-income housing property tax exemptions.
I'll second the motion.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution. Any further discussion? I hear none. I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. And then related, the next item is consider approval of an order that establishes a fee for the processing of applications and renewals for the nonprofit corporation low-income housing exemptions. Scott, Josh, perhaps again, go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners. Once again, Scott Norris from the Office of Legal Counsel. This is an order for the application fee, both an application fee for the initial year of exemption and a renewal fee for the annual renewal of the exemption. The initial application fee would be for $250, and the renewal fee would be for $50, which is consistent with the application fees for other exemption programs administered by the assessor.
Okay. Questions or comment?
I have one question.
Go ahead.
So what's the basis of the fee?
It's to cover the costs of processing the application by the assessor to verify eligibility criteria.
So did they do an analysis, like a workload analysis? Generally, that would be the right answer. They did. But if they didn't, it would be, they just made it up?
I do not know what the assessor had done to arrive at that. I know that the fees are the same as the fees charged for other exemption applications.
Okay, well, then that's the basis.
Yes,
Is that they're the same as what they charge for others?
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Good.
Just because I'll say out loud what I'm thinking, we're not trying to generate income here. We're trying
No.
to do something good for the community. I could be swayed. That's all.
Right. Well, I would just hope that departments, when they're looking at fees, actually look that there's a rational basis between what they're charging in terms of staff time, staff salaries, and they do that analysis. So hopefully they'll hear it here, and John will relay that when we're involved in these types of things. So, Mr. Chair, I would go ahead and move approval of the order that establishes a fee of $250 for the processing of applications and renewals for the nonprofit corporation low-income housing exemption.
I'll second the motion.
It's moved and seconded to approve the order that establishes fees for applications and renewals, I'm repeating, for nonprofit corporations. Any further discussion? I don't hear any. All in favor then say aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes, and I hope it helps you and helps the community.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Commissioners.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, our next item, we'll have the supplemental budget after public hearing. We'll come back to that, so we'll move to under health. Consider approval of the contract for services with Healthcare Services LLC for $150,000 to provide temporary healthcare professionals through November 30th, 2019. And Scott Richards is here. That's all, apparently. Good morning, Scott.
Morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about our contract with Healthcare Services LLC. Healthcare Services LLC is a temporary medical staffing agency located in the Salem area. And actually, when we last reviewed local options, the only one in the Salem area. We started contracting with them in 2014 to help us in our needs with our medication-assisted treatment agency. So in the dispensing of methadone and our Suboxone treatment, we are required to use medical staff, RNs or LPNs, for that process. We have had a very challenging time recruiting and acquiring staff for this program. It's just a specialty area that is difficult to attract qualified candidates to. So we began, as we've seen growth, we've had needs for filling in for people that are sick or on vacation. And our attempts at recruiting temps were even more difficult than regular employees. When I last checked with our supervisor there, we had a temp recruitment for a year without a single person to interview. So we began contracting with this temporary medical services agency. We've had really good response from them, particularly with LPNs, one of which we ultimately ended up hiring as an employee about a year ago. And it's a critical need right now. I think that when we move from our current location on Davcor to Silverton Road and have additional space, we'll really be looking at potentially adding more regular medical staff because of the growth that we've seen in the medication-assisted treatment program. But for now, and I think going into the future, we really need some temporary staff that can backfill as the needs arise. Any questions?
Are there? I don't see any.
Don't have any questions.
Ready for a motion?
Please.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we approve a contract for services with Healthcare Services LLC for $150,000 to provide temporary healthcare professionals through November 30th, 2019.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the contract for services with Healthcare Services LLC. Any further discussion? Thank you very much. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. That motion passes. So Scott, I hope you find the people and keep them coming. I know it's an important program.
I think from several years ago, we've probably doubled the number of people that we're providing medication-assisted treatment to. So it's really a growing need, as you know, with the opiate crisis that we were facing.
Yikes.
No, thank you.
All right, thank you.
He's got the next one, too.
Our next item's also under Hill. You're staying right there, Scott.
Yep.
Good. Consider approval of a grant agreement with Willamette Valley Community Health in the amount of $150,000 to pass funds to Youth Move Oregon for funding of one full-time employee for a term ending January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2019. What did I say?
Mr. Chair, 150.
Oh, 190,000. Usually I wear glasses, but it's 190.
I'm so glad that you're back on my side.
Well, I was going to talk about perfection with you, Commissioner, and one would be you always tell people to pull your microphone up, and I have to tell you, on that last motion, I couldn't hear you, so that's take it for what it's worth.
That's because your ears are plugged from your pneumonia shot.
All right, let's begin. Scott?
Scott Richards with the Health Department, and with me.
Philip Blair with Children's Behavioral Health.
So actually, perhaps a little more exciting item than the last one that, although critical, I think that Youth and Family Crisis Services is a new program that we're excited about and just really pleased to have started. So one component of that program that will be possible as a result of this Willamette Valley Community Health grant is the addition of services from Youth Move. And I'll let Phil here talk about the types of services that they provide, and really crisis services for youth and families includes wrapping around not only family mentors and a family component from Oregon Family Support Network, but also from Youth Move and their peer mentors.
So the program would look at wrapping around youth that are 14 or older. So if we got a crisis call from the youth services, we would then do a referral to Youth Move so that a peer could actually call the youth to find out what would be helpful to keep them in the home. And so we're really looking at how do we enrich youth's lives to be able to maintain in their home environments rather than feeling like they need to run away or escalate further. So this is a peer group that would look to support the youth in the home and in the community to sort of strengthen families' bonds.
We have an existing contract with Youth Move to provide similar services in an emergency department diversion project that's been in place at Salem Hospital for, gosh, maybe 3 years now. So exactly the same kind of model that you have contact with someone in crisis and you look at not just resolving the crisis that moment and sending them on their way, but how do you wrap supports around that individual or family to ensure that they get the help they need, maybe for as long as 30 to 60 days until they're well connected with other service providers in the community. So.
Okay.
I have some questions.
Go ahead.
Thanks. So I've been introduced to Youth Move through some of these other meetings and venues, and actually some questions came up from a person from a nonprofit agency that I couldn't answer, and so I thought I'd just throw these out to you. So what are the parameters around who is selected to be a peer in Youth Move, and how do we make sure that the youth that are interfacing with these youth peers are behaving appropriately? You know, if there's one on, is there supervision? Are there background checks, or is there one-on-one? You know, I'm trying to understand exactly, you know, how we lay out parameters so that youth are safe when they're in the company of someone who's a peer.
So, great question, because I think that that's always in people's mind. They have to take a 40-hour class to be peer certified, which goes over boundaries and those kinds of things. And then they also have to receive peer supervision as well as clinical supervision. And so we'd provide some clinical supervision to monitor and regulate sort of those boundaries. And because I think with peers, you're always looking at, they don't get the professional training to sort of deal with vicarious trauma and sort of those boundary issues that blur regularly. So we do develop regular supervision, clinical supervision, as well as peer supervision. And they would also consult with our youth and family team, this person particularly. So we would have ongoing consultation and monitoring of sort of that relationship.
And so are there any boundaries too around whether there's male, female, or so could a male peer be paired with a female client? And if so, how does that work?
So yes, and so again, it'd be monitoring, I think, male, female, female, male, male. I think you always worry about the boundaries in relations to youth, in relations to sort of being abused in any kind of particular, or taken advantage of in any kind of particular manner. So if it's a traumatized male or female, we'd look to see if the youth that we actually have working with us is the right fit for that person. And so I think, again, it's always taken into consideration, what does the youth that is needing services need? So that would be one of our discussions, because the position does ask for one position, and we would like the flexibility to have a male and female staff that would be able to sort of meet those needs versus we got one male or we got one female. So I think we've taken a lot of effort to youth to look at our services at Youth and Families to be male and female specific as well as language specific. And so we're looking to do the same thing with Youth Move. We'll hopefully be in that hiring process to answer those questions.
Okay. And just one other question. I really appreciate this, and I'm just trying to understand it, frankly. So are the parents engaged, involved? Are the parents aware? Do they have to give permission? Kind of what role do the parents play in this relationship?
So the parents don't necessarily have to give permission, because at the age of 14, kids actually have consent. However, we will make parents aware that we've made a referral to Youth Move, as well as we've made a referral to Oregon Family Support Network. So we would connect the parents with Oregon Family Support Network, and then the peers, the youth with the peers. And we would definitely let the parents know of any of the referrals that we've made to the youth, we'd make the parents aware of.
Okay. And can I ask one more
Sure.
question? So, and if something did come up that was untoward, are the clients given some sort of information about reporting if they feel like someone's violating the boundaries and they feel uncomfortable or whatever? Do you have a system for that in place, a protocol?
So I think that's a great question. I don't think that there's a protocol in place. I think that that's a great question in relations to making families aware of any kind of concerns that they would have. How do you make that grievance known? I think that'll definitely be something we look into.
Although actually, for everybody that we're providing treatment services to, we make them aware of their rights, and we hand them a copy of their rights, and we give them the complaint process and hand them a form that says, if you want to file a complaint, this is how you do it. So
That's at the outset of services, though.
Yes.
Correct.
So this could get added on to someone that had been in service for maybe a number of years, and now they're getting a mentor, you know what I'm saying? And
Correct.
so to
Right.
refresh that and
Right.
review it, maybe something that you want to consider. Okay, thanks. Those are all my questions.
Any others?
Good, thank you.
All right, so with those concerns on the record, and I'm confident that the department's going to work through those, I will move approval of a grant agreement with Willamette Valley Community Health in the amount of $190,000 to pass funds to Youth Move Oregon for funding of one full-time employee for a term of January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2019.
I'll second the motion.
All right, it's moved and second to approve the grant agreement with Willamette Valley Community Health for $190,000. Any further discussion?
I did say that, right?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Oh, I should have said no.
All right.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
both, and I hope it does work. See, when you have it close, people can hear you.
Oh, dear.
Our final, I'm glad there's law enforcement coming.
No, really. Somebody needs to call order in this meeting. It's getting out of control.
We have lots to be thankful for.
Under the Sheriff's Office, consider approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Woodburn to cooperate and share resources for Special Weapons and Tactics Team, SWAT. Sheriff Jason Myers and one of my favorite Woodburn Police Chief, Jim Ferris. So, go ahead, Jason.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. For the record, Jason Myers, Marion County Sheriff, and with me is Jim Ferris, the Woodburn Police Chief. We're here today to present this intergovernmental agreement between the City of Woodburn, the Woodburn Police Department, and the Sheriff's Office around sharing resources for our Special Weapons and Tactics Team. Just as a matter of history, the Sheriff's Office hosts the team. We've had the team in existence for over 10 years. We've had similar agreements in place with other municipalities around the county, and for a variety of different reasons, the municipalities, whether it's staffing or other reasons, have gone off the team. And I'll let the chief talk about the purpose of joining back up with the team here in just a minute. But this really is a great opportunity for the Sheriff's Office, for the Woodburn Police Department, for the citizens of Marion County, because this allows members of the Woodburn Police Department to participate with our team in training and in the occasions that we have to deploy our SWAT team. We have additional resources, not only from the Sheriff's Office, but from other law enforcement agencies. So it's really a win-win for both our organization and the Woodburn Police Department. So I'll let the chief talk about his feelings on this agreement.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jim Ferris, Woodburn Police Chief. Thanks for having me here. This agreement is really a good business decision for our police department and our city, and a good public safety decision for all of our greater Marion County communities. Woodburn had its own tactical team when I came on board 2 years ago, and it was unable to maintain standards of training because of staffing levels. It was a team of 15+ officers in a 35 officer police department, so you can imagine the draw on personnel strength when that team was deployed. So I dissolved the team as a business decision and started conversations with the sheriff about having a joint team, and of course that partnership was born and built on existing relations. This is also going to enhance relations between our two agencies. It's going to put Woodburn officers and Marion County Sheriff's deputies working together, training together, deploying together, and it'll be of great benefit to us. It really is a force multiplier. So we're really excited to see this move forward, and we have our people identified, and we're just waiting for the ink on the paper so we can deploy them appropriately. So thank you for having us here.
And if I could just add, this is one of several collaborative efforts we have with Woodburn. One that you are aware of is around mobile crisis. We have a Woodburn officer and a clinician from the health department working together with our behavioral health team out in the community and helping divert people from the criminal justice system. So the chief and the city of Woodburn are great partners, and again, this is a good agreement for both, for all the reasons mentioned, and for both agencies. Thank you.
Anything? Questions, comments?
Thank you for just the work you do, and we're just thankful for the men and women that serve us every day and what you do to keep us protected, and as we go forward tomorrow and have some time with our families and give thanks. I know your people will be out there still working 24/7, and just really appreciate what you do for us. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
And if I could just add, Sheriff came and made this presentation on Monday at Management Update, so we had, which is probably why we don't really have any questions right now, because we've already heard the outline of it, but I appreciate the fact that we collaborate amongst different law enforcement agencies. It's more efficient. It's certainly better for enhancing public safety across our county, and so appreciate the work that you do together.
Great, thank you.
What do you do? Look at my notes? But I wanted to say
Sorry.
those same things. I like the consistency, but I didn't know, and I didn't say this before, I didn't know that that this community, other communities joining in had kind of broken down. So is Woodburn the only community you're going to be working with? Would you like to see others come? I mean, for being consistent, the relationships the chief mentioned, I see so many good things. And, standardized training, that's awfully important.
Yeah, so we open this opportunity up to any of the municipal agencies. One of the reasons it's broken down is probably the hiring crisis. It's just having a resource available for the team, that's one. And then two, the standards to meet the team. There's a physical standard, there is a training component, there's an interview, and so that is also a person has to work to be able to get themselves eligible to even be on the team.
I forget about that. They'll have to come in to train most of the time and be out of their city, and so that is a cost and a loss, but I think the overall benefit's certainly there.
Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments? And if not, a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we approve an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Woodburn to cooperate and share resources for Special Weapons and Tactics Team, SWAT.
Second the motion?
Motion been moved and seconded to approve an intergovernmental agreement with Woodburn to cooperate on a Special Weapons and Tactics Team. Anything else? Hearing none, I'll call a question. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you again. And thank you. We'll get that ink drying very soon.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Commissioner.
you. Have a great Thanksgiving.
So our last item, it is after 9:30, so we will open a public hearing having to do, well, I better find it. Having to do with a supplemental budget for fiscal year 2017-18. Now, I expected Richard here. There's new faces. Debbie?
Good morning, Commissioners. Debbie Gregg, Finance Department.
Jeff White, Chief Financial Officer.
That's correct. I'm here to present the first supplemental budget request for fiscal year 17-18 in accordance with county policy and Oregon local budget law. Public notice of this meeting has been published in the Statesman Journal a week ago, and copies have been available on the county website and also a hard copy in the Board of Commissioners office. This supplemental budget request was reviewed a couple weeks ago at a management update by the commissioners in detail. As you'll see on page 2 of your packet, 30 funds have been modified for this supplemental request. It's an increase of about $16.3 million, which brings the total county budget up to $428.7 million. The majority of the increase, about $11.6 million, is actually related to networking capital and adjusting that to actual. So those are resources that were unexpended in the prior year that are then carried over into this fiscal year and are available as resources for this budget. I'd like to go into just a few significant changes of the more of the funds that have modified the most. The first one is the general fund. It increased $5.9 million. Again, a majority of that has to do with networking capital, about $5.3 million. We did receive a one-time only marijuana tax distribution of $658,000 that is recorded in this request. Requirements have been modified. $4.2 million is going to has been allocated to ending fund balance. $400,000 to contingency, and then 1.3 is allocated to transfers out, and that has to do with a few things. 1.1 million is going to capital improvement projects fund, which I'd like to discuss. I'll discuss that fund in detail later. We have some representatives from the various departments that'll discuss new projects associated with those transfers. $114,000 is going to central service for information technology for a couple areas, materials and service increase costs, and also personnel service increase for an additional FTE for a security analyst position. And then also with the general fund transfer, $45,000 is going to Public Works for costs associated with the solar eclipse event that happened in August. Moving on to the facility renovation fund, it increased in total $1.4 million. Again, that was all from networking capital, and that really is just distributed to capital outlay for existing projects. The increase is either due to finalizing projects or reallocating expenditures that didn't occur in the prior year that we need to reallocate for this budget period. Health fund increased 1.7, mostly due to state revenue for the developmental disabilities program. There were some slight reductions in federal and also local Medicaid funding. Requirements were modified for the following. Personnel services is reduced by $127,000 for a layoff of 2 program supervisors. Materials and services increased for some contracted services to support the youth and family crisis program. And then capital outlay also increased $421,000 for a couple of projects. DavCorp to Silverton relocation project, and then phone system improvements and an IDEA learning training module. Transfers out also increased $87,000 for 2 projects, which I believe we'll discuss later. Her Place site improvements, and then a health portion of the fiber optics interconnect project that Public Works is overseeing. And the remaining funds for that were allocated to contingency and ending fund balance. Lottery and Economic Development Fund increased $571,000, all associated with networking capital. And that is being allocated mostly to materials and services for increased contracted services for several projects. Did you want to come up? There's some new projects, but there's also modification in existing projects. So I believe Tamara's here from Community Services if you want to discuss those projects in detail.
Fine.
So are we to the IT project, to the capital projects now?
One more fund.
Well, go ahead and finish out then.
All right. All right. Public Works Fund increased $1.8 million, largely due again to networking capital. Materials and services I discussed increased for the solar event project and also some emergency management service materials and services. Capital outlay increased $510,000 for Public Works, several carryover projects, and 1 new project, which is the South River Road slide repair. And then remaining funds in that, remaining resources available were allocated to ending fund balance for that fund. Now, capital improvement projects.
So can I make a comment
Please,
before we do that?
I should say, I missed this work session, so I know there were some questions, so please go ahead.
Right, so we went through this at management update, and
Yes.
Debbie came, and Rich was there, and Meinecker and Jeff. And for me personally, I think a supplemental budget, particularly the first supplemental budget, is generally probably larger because what happens is we do our best guesses about what's going to happen in the spring. We approve a budget in June, and then the legislature gets out in July, and grant amounts change, and all kinds of things change. Or we get grant applications that are approved, and that happens throughout the year, and then we have to come back and adjust the budget. And in this particular one, the networking capital piece, so for people that are listening, that is what a lot of people would call their ending balance, right? And beginning balance. And so you have a guesstimate on what our ending balance is, and then you put that into the budget as the beginning balance. But then what happens when the audited numbers come out, and I think August is the cutoff date, right? And you finally know what everyone's really spent, and then this is the adjustment. And the reason our budget in Marion County, by the way, is award-winning is because a lot of counties never adjust this, as long as they got room, And we try to make sure that things are really adjusted so that the budget is a true representation of what the county is doing, which is admirable and really what the intent of budget is. So with all of that said, there were some things in this budget that didn't exactly follow that particular process. They weren't just things that were changes because the legislature did something different, or weren't just networking capital, and particularly in the capital projects. So in some of the capital projects, what I'd be expecting to see is that we didn't get as much done on a particular roof project as we thought we did in the last year, and so we're going to carry forward a bunch of money so we can finish it in this year. Or we got it all done last year, and so what we thought we needed to carry over, So those are, in my view, are fine. Those are very appropriate. The board's already reviewed those. But there were a list of new projects that evidently John had heard about, and Jan, but the board hadn't heard about. And so it's my fault. I requested that those that had new projects come to a meeting here, because with all of the other projects, there have been either presentations, grant applications where it came before the board or it went before the budget committee, but none of these, as my understanding, have actually gone to the budget committee or to the board in another forum. So I just wanted to put that out there. So you're not being called on the carpet because there's anything wrong with doing this. It's just that I think it's important that the public knows and that the board has in a public forum the opportunity to hear about these projects before we approve them in a very large amount of shuffling of numbers back and forth, which we call the supplemental budget.
Exactly.
So that is my request. So we had on the list, right, there were
about 6 new projects. Is
right.
Yeah.
So Public Works, Radio Shack remodel, clerk ballot sorter software, health phone system upgrade, her place renovation, juvenile pole barn and sawmill, and IT office remodel.
Correct.
Right?
That's
Those
right.
are
Yeah.
the 6. So
we could start with Public Works.
right. So if we could just a very brief description of what it is and why, and that would be great. As if this were the budget committee.
No.
Thank you, Commissioners. Alan Haley, Public Works Director, and as I'm understanding, we're talking about the radio building improvements that we had at our Woodburn facility. This is a joint project between Business Services Facilities and Public Works, where we have a communications building that we identified last year as having some severe problems is probably not the right word, but it's a very important piece to our communications system, and it was leaking. The building has a lot of mold and stuff in it, and the problem is that the radio equipment that's inside needs to be and retain operational. So we've had Larry Tilford with Facilities and his team were looking over options from last fall through the spring, trying to figure out what to do with this building.
And we got estimates from some folks to, I think, build a shell around it to potentially even just simply replace it, which would then have to have the equipment out and back in. Radio systems would be down for a period of time that we didn't really want to have happen. So the end result is, I'm going to let Larry tell you exactly what we're planning on doing with this facility, but Public Works is paying for it.
The building fundamentally has some structural damage because of the moisture intrusion, and so many of the wall studs, sorry. By the way, Larry Tilford, Facility Program Manager for the county. Many of the wall studs are soft, and if you lean on the wall will actually flex. So what we propose to do is to take the laminate off the inside of the walls and just simply remove the studs that are damaged and replace them. We're also going to be putting a new roof on. It's basically, if you want to picture it, it's a trailer without wheels with the radio system inside. And we propose to leave the radio system intact and in place and not remove it, and just build around it. And we would like to do that in April if weather conditions will allow us to do that.
We have put another tarp over the building to protect it from weather right through the winter. But it was a complicated project, and we didn't have a solution to it. All the CIPs were turned in basically in January from facilities perspective, and we didn't really have a design sort of solution to it until May and June this past year.
So that explains why it didn't make it in the budget then?
Correct.
It's
Correct.
because the design came after the CIP list was done?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Great. I have no
It's
other
minor, but any kind of dehumidifier plan to go in there, it sounds like that's part of the problem. Or you won't need it with a good roof, what are you saying?
We believe we got it waterproof for now, Commissioner, and we're just buying time until the weather turns better.
All right. Anything else? All right, thank you.
Okay. Other Public Works CIP issues?
You have the list, Commissioner. Are there other Public Works?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
That's it.
Very good. Thank you.
Why don't you go ahead and call them off?
So I think Bill is next. It's the clerk ballot sorter software.
Hi, Bill Burgess, Marion County Clerk, and thank you, Commissioners, for calling this so that we can talk about these different changes that were made after the budget process. As you know, when we check ballots, we can only open a ballot if the signature matches. And with our vote tally, our sorter system, part of the contract that we had signed a little over a year ago was for automatic signature checking, but at the time the state was not allowing the use of that, or at least that was the understanding with the state. And so we didn't want to pay for that portion of it at that time. This summer, the Secretary of State's office decided that yes, we can use that automatic signature checking. And so that's why we spent the extra $10,000 to get that software going for us. And that'll help more in uniformity and speed up the process. The sorter itself already speeds up the process quite a bit. This will enhance what we have now, which I think would be of help to everybody. Also, with CIP items, I just did want to mention very briefly, we've got 3 others that you're going to see very shortly. Ballot tracks, where we're tracking ballots and sending email or text or voicemail to people. The state no longer paying for that, and so we'll be asking for another $16,000 for that. We have a emergent problem with our vote tally system. We were supposed to have an upgrade in a couple of years. We may have to do that upgrade very shortly. And that's more like $250,000. Then we have a special opportunity to move our records management system, our land records management system, mortgage deeds and liens system, upgrade that to a new .NET platform, the most modern type, for a very, very low price of about $40,000 if we act on that fairly soon. So those are three other projects that may be coming before you too that we didn't talk about in the budget, but because of the changing world around us, we really need to look at those opportunities.
All right.
Great. Thank you. Health phone system upgrade, that's $47,929, and her place renovation, $52,455. So Carrie Moeller gets the privilege of explaining these to us.
Yeah, now I don't know if they could hear that.
Good morning. I'm Scott Emery, the Director of Information Technology, and I'll represent the phone system upgrade. CIP was in fact submitted to actually upgrade 2 different systems, actually 3, depending how you count it, both for health, both for the court system, but also voicemail itself. The estimate, as you had described earlier, was put in place during the budgeting process, and as we came forward to actually go and implement the systems, the cost had increased by that $40,000. That's the difference, is it's just primarily the overall cost increase over estimate.
Oh, well, so let me ask you then, Scott, so why is it listed under new and modified projects? Because the ones that are existing projects that had the addition were actually listed on the other side, so that is confusing to me.
I would also say confusing. I'm looking at the paperwork that was submitted, and I see it under repair. I don't see it under new and existing. So it may very well be that initially when the initial estimate went in, it was as in a new component into an existing system is the best way I could probably describe it, but nonetheless it is an upgrade to what we have. It's really kind of a end-of-life extension to our platforms that will buy us another 5 years, at which point we're going to have to go through and reassess our phone systems for the county.
Okay, can I just ask one more question so I make sure
Please.
we're saying the same thing? So this was a CIP project that the board and budget committee approved in the budget, and it was just more money than what was originally approved.
Correct. That is my understanding. To kind of further, the same CIP request came in a prior budget year that had not been approved. It was rolled forward and then approved just in this last budget cycle. And now we have that shortfall over estimate.
Okay. Can I ask Debbie or Jeff? So is that, and can you talk into a microphone so that the record picks you up?
Yes, Commissioners, that first column of numbers that we called existing projects, we listed those as projects that had no change in dollars or were the same exact thing that had been approved before. The second column, new projects and or modified. If their budgets were increased, we included them as a new and modified project.
So this was one that went through the CIP process?
Yes, it just had a significant addition to it.
Okay, great, thanks.
Morning, Carrie Moeller, Marion County Health Department Administrator. I'm here to talk a little bit about her place. I have Larry join me. Unfortunately, Colleen was going to be here today, but she's sick, so Larry agreed to step in. I appreciate that. So just a little background. Her Place is a women's and children's treatment program that Marion County Health Department operates in a facility, a house on Fisher Road. In July, there was a series of complaints that came forward about the facility. Our facility staff went and took a look and identified a significant concerns, and that was forwarded then to the county facilities, who did an assessment in August, and the CIP was developed then in August. So we had an original 5-year plan to do some painting that you saw in the spreadsheet. This was a significant change to that, some significant disrepair. We do own that building, and so the CIP was completed and created in October, and so the request for the supplemental budget then.
Can you maybe explain, so Why is it necessary now? I mean, what's the urgency of it, I guess?
Yeah, it's a very urgent matter. We had some septic problems and some leakage there, some odor that we were trying to remedy, and then some other significant concerns to the facility. Larry, you want to add to that?
Again, moisture damage. We discovered moisture damage to some of the structure of the building when we were under the building addressing the septic failure. And there's some windows that have failed as well on the building. So when we did a whole building assessment, as we were asked to do, we put together a proposal that is basically a remodel of the house to bring it up into good condition.
I have toured her place, by the way, and it's a wonderful, wonderful program, so I'm very supportive of it.
Yeah, one of the, I think, critical things about her place is we've got a conditional use permit there to operate that program in the community, so I personally am very invested in the site, and I agree. We've got some great things happening in that location.
I too have toured it, and it's pretty cool what they do there, so we need to make sure it's safe.
Yes.
Thank you. No other questions? Thank you. So now, juvenile pole barn and sawmill, $92,660.
Good morning, Commissioners. Troy Gregg, Marion County Juvenile Director. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about the pole barn and the sawmill that we have requested. We did have the opportunity to present to Management Board Committee in July of this last year. I wasn't there because I'm new to the Juvenile Department, but I do have Todd with me as well. But to talk about the project, about a year ago, the Juvenile Department started working with milling and working through the project and kind of understanding the full scope of what it was, what the impact is, learning how to mill effectively, starting to create community partnerships to see what we could do when it comes to selling the products that was coming out of the mill, and using the wood instead of just doing firewood, which the Juvenile Department had typically done, but to create opportunities for youth to build things out of that and then work through the Fresh Market Express to sell those products. And what we really kind of came into ultimately in this request was we were actually more efficient than we actually thought we were. And so a lot more wood came into the Juvenile Department, and even based on the presentation of July 17th, which we had some photos of the wood that we have about a third more logs that we can actually do the work with now. And the community partnerships to sell the product ultimately in the end came together a lot quicker than we thought. And so ultimately in late May, early June, we came to the function of what we needed to do in order to be more efficient. The new sawmill will actually be 8 times faster. It's more commercial, and so the training that we give the youth in this project will actually prepare them for a commercial job, because the same company that makes this machine prepares the commercial product as well. And so it's more, the current one that we have, which is very low cost, is all hand. So we all do the wood by hand, load the wood by hand. The new machine actually puts the logs in there, and then we program that piece of it to ultimately make it happen. And so that was the ultimate reason why it came as quickly as it did. We anticipated it would take longer to kind of get all those factors together, but it came together very quickly. And then in community partnerships as well, just to let you know, yesterday we did get confirmation from Salem Kaiser School District that we can earn credits for the youth doing the work in the mill as well. So, Todd?
I'm Todd Scheld, Program Supervisor. I think Troy pretty much covered it. Really, things developed a lot faster than we anticipated. The partnerships within the community to bring in the wood really developed so much faster. And then when I talked with the previous director after a tour, she pointed out the fact that we had a very large amount of logs, and everything had came along much faster than we anticipated, and that's when we started to move forward in pricing and figuring out what the possibilities would be for moving into this wood mill.
I just have a quick question. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation. And I know we did see this equipment, et cetera, and saw this last summer, and appreciate what you're doing. And at Chuck Cybran's retirement, there was a gift that was presented to him that I know is done probably with the old equipment, but it was really, really unique. And you maybe share a little bit about that's the type of thing that could be done and sold and custom produced by our youth and sold at the market. Todd, you gonna share that? Scott, I think Scott did that one.
Yes, yes. We made all the things that were at the presentation on that, and the one thing that's really nice about this is we're really going to advance in our ability to produce much higher quality product with being low cost to us, since the wood we'll have fabricated ourselves. Some of the things we'll be able to make in the future would have been very difficult because of the purchase of just the product itself would have been expensive. We won't have that expense anymore, but we really anticipate really moving forward with some much higher end product that the kids could really take, you know, understand that they have the ability to do those things much better.
A follow up, if I may, just so it says Beavers on it, I'll buy it. By the way, you know, it is, never mind, I'm not going to say it in the microphone.
Well, I can hear you really well.
I've been wearing my tie all week long.
You're
know?
a good one.
It is.
A little pin.
Good. Yeah. All right.
So I've got a couple
But
questions.
this could make our
Good,
season
good,
on
good.
Saturday, and then not.
Go ahead.
Well, so just a comment and then a question. So we did have a presentation on this at Management Update, and we saw a video and all of that kind of thing. So, well, actually two questions. So the one question that I had based on that to make sure, so it looked like, anyway, it looked like it was a much better piece of equipment, a lot safer for the kids, a lot higher production, all the things that you're talking about. So we have a guy right now that's really into wood. Is this contingent on kind of the idiosyncrasy of having a particular staff person, or do you see this program continuing on no matter who is running that particular program for the juvenile department?
Well, I think it's a great question. I'll have Todd answer, although I could steal his thunder, but go ahead.
I think it's very helpful that we have somebody who has those abilities, but I think it could continue on regardless of what staff we have. And in the future, we anticipate, if he did leave, trying to hire someone with similar skills as well.
So you'd continue having the volume of wood coming in that would merit having this purchase?
Yeah, yes. The volume, I think, is not based on that particular staff.
Okay.
The high-end work that we could produce with that wood is something that's more in line with having Scott.
Okay. And then my second question is around the Title IV monies, which at least it was presented at the meeting that was those were the dollars. Are those still the dollars you're using to purchase this with? And if they are, just making sure that if we take $92,000 out of that reserve, I guess, that we still have enough to operate the programs that we're continuing to work on, the intervention programs for the high-risk youth.
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Commissioner. Yes to both questions. I do have Kathy here give the exact numbers, but there is plenty in that reserve to accomplish what we want to accomplish, as well as looking forward in the future for more opportunities.
Okay, great.
At the list?
We got, well, that's the end of the juvenile. We have IT office remodel, $39,100. So the first question we're going to have is that this went way down from $81,075 that we saw a couple weeks ago, so you can talk about that. Scott has plausible, well, actually, Carrie and Scott and Troy all have, what is it, plausible deniability? What's the word that they use, right? Because they weren't here when we did the budget. So were you here? You were here, right? But you were fairly recent in the job, right? So, and then Scott, there's also in the next page, there is a new IT security analyst, so if you want to just cover both of them.
Great. Again, Scott Emery, Information Technology Director. And thank you for the little segue introduction of kind of the overlap between the transitions. The first item up has to do with a minor remodel for this facility to accommodate additional staff. Right now we're out of space, and we were fortunate enough to have been granted through the last budget cycle additional FTEs to cover some of the gaps that we've had. So we do have a critical need to actually be able to accommodate some new desk space. The plan was to actually move our current support staff from the back to the front to help support the walk-in traffic that we get. So it's ideal to give better customer service, but more importantly, it is to accommodate the hires that we're actually in the process of doing. The initial request came in for a total of 10 desk space. We cut it back to make sure it went through the appropriate process and review, and it only went to the minimums, which was 4. So hence that was a reason why you saw a reduction in the overall request. So again, we will follow up with the additional 6 cubes coming the next budget cycle. So that covers that particular aspect. There was another one in here as well. I'm not sure if you want to cover.
Another Another
IT,
CI
it was under the label of IT equipment,
Okay.
and I wanted to make sure I touched base.
Well, I missed that one, so.
Well, I think good to have full disclosure. This was a regulatory change in part. There's actually two components to it. The first has to do with recent changes at the federal level for the American Disability Act, what they call 508C, which talks about the fact that we have our public-facing websites, and we want to make sure that they're compliant and easy to use by our citizens. So part of that new change required us to go off and find a solution, and the particular solution we looked at is a third-party vendor that actually is able to provide scanning capability of our websites, and it tells us how do we need to make modifications to make them user-friendly for those that have disabilities. So that's a portion of that particular request. The secondary appears to be a kind of a miss from a past budgetary request, in that there's a new point-of-sale system that the Treasury is using, and with that initial budget request, they did in fact include 1 year's worth of maintenance, but they did not in fact budget for the following years. So there was a gap that was just recently identified. And last but not least is our recommendation around adding a FTE for a security engineer. Last year, the board authorized and commissioned an independent review of our security assessment, not only for the county at large, but also for a very specific department application, for which there was many items that were identified for us to mitigate. Subsequent reviews and assessments that we've taken place, reviewed it with both risk management, legal, as well as our administration staff, came to the conclusion that we need a little bit more focused effort in and around information security for the county, and hence the recommendation is to add a full-time security analyst. The security analyst will help us with not only develop the appropriate policies and guidelines that are necessary to make sure our systems and information are secure, but also go through the process of making sure that our staff here in the county are well educated and trained around those risks associated with information security.
Yeah, that was great. I don't have any questions.
Go ahead. Yes, Mr. Chair, and I was looking for my little, what do you call those things, the stick that we were educated on.
USB drive?
USB drive that I'm not supposed to put in my computer unless you guys have checked it out.
Thank you.
Just a question really quick. The personnel position, I saw the amount in there and I'm just curious, is that, because it looks like it's not a lot of money for that type of a position. Is it for a partial year?
I believe it is. I'm looking to the administration staff to help me out a little bit on the financial component of it, but I believe the answer is yes. The other aspect is that we're trying to find more of a mid-level security analyst, security engineer for that continuity. We are not seeking a chief information security officer or anything of that nature at this time.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
And I've got one more question that I could direct to John Latimer that was in the budget also that I wanted to make sure that we covered here, and that was under the rainy day fund for the lump sum special payment to establish a county side account with PERS. So that hasn't been formalized yet by the board, so if you just want to give a high-level description about what we're planning to do there.
What we want to do is take the funds that we have in our rainy day fund, which are only available for PERS funding. We spent, I think, $2 million several years ago to reduce the costs in PERS. The problem is you do that 1 year and then it just bounces back up the next year. So what we want to do then is take some $2.2 million that we have in the rainy day fund, send it to PERS to put in a side account that helps reduce our costs in future years, because they use that side account to help offset the cost of PERS. And then in the future we can put excess general fund in that rainy day fund, and we can spend it on anything rather than just PERS.
All right, I see you're back. Tammy, did you want to have something? Do you have questions? Do you?
Nope, all of her stuff was in the budget, so.
All right, fine, I saw you wanting to come.
You had some dog shelter things and whatever, right? But those weren't those all budgeted?
Yes, let's go ahead. Let's have a clean slate.
The items that we had in our supplemental budget were for projects that were in our networking capital as well as personnel savings. Those are reflected, and I have some additional papers that I'll hand out to you. We've adjusted some, I think it's Fjord, as well as Business Oregon marinas. Both of those are all existing projects that are carrying over into this fiscal year. We thought that they were going to be in last year's budget numbers. And then under the new projects, we have strategic plan as well as our Brooks opportunities. Both of those areas have include items that have been in conversation with the board as well as our staff and partners since the budget was submitted in the spring of this year, and so these dollars are supporting those efforts as we move forward. We've been working with finance to develop a pool of contractors, so once the county has its strategic plan for economic development established, that we can then move quickly, nimbly, and collaboratively to make those projects advance.
Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. No one from the public is signed up to provide any testimony. So Debbie, Jeff, any additional things you'd like to add? Go ahead.
Just one. In the CIP fund, the Capital Improvement Projects Fund, back on page 4, not in a list, but in the paragraph underneath the list, it talks about other capital outlay of $1 million to be allocated for information technology and other equipment needs that are currently being assessed. As our new director's been here, I think he has pointed out a number of areas where we need some significant improvement in all kinds of ways. That plan is being worked on. Is it equipment? Is it software? We're not sure, but we have decided to get some dollars there to be available when that gets laid out and brought to the commissioners to talk about what those needs are.
Okay. Tammy. All right. Thank you. Debbie, something?
I was just going to say, if you have any other questions on any of the detail in the funds, you do have a draft resolution for your consideration for the supplemental budget request.
All right. Are there other questions? Then perhaps a motion and close.
Right, so is there anyone else that signed up to testify?
No, there's no one.
Okay, great. So, Mr. Chair, I would move that we close the public hearing, and I would move that the board approve the resolution adopting the fiscal year 2017-18 first supplemental budget, with my thanks to all of the people who came to add information to this meeting.
I'll second the motion and the thank you.
All right. It's moved and seconded to approve the resolution that adopts the first supplemental budget for the year 2017-18. Any further discussion? And close the public hearing. I hear none. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries as budget's approved. Thank you all. I know a lot of extra work goes into that, but I like the procedure. And I think you're correct in calling it that we do address them and not just lump them through. All right, that's the end of what we have on our agenda this morning, other than to read the places we'll be together in the coming week. Here it says Thursday, closed for Thanksgiving. I'm coming in anyway. No. Monday, the 27th, calendar review, Silver Conference Room, 5th floor, 555 Court Street Northeast in Salem. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit drippy here today, and I apologize. Monday, management update, Silver Conference Room, 9 to 11. Also Monday, the 27th, Board of Commissioners Chief Administrative Officer meeting, executive session if needed, pursuant to ORS 192-660-2ABDFHI. And that'll begin immediately after management update, also in Silver Conference Room. Monday's a busy day. At noon, we'll have a presentation by PACE having to do with our public outreach. It'll be the Silver Conference Room also. And then at 1:30 on Monday, a work session, construction project update, Silver Conference Room. And then, just to wrap up a long, miserable day, Monday, 4 o'clock to 6, Gloria Roy's retirement party. What? I thought you'd reconsider by now. You see we need guidance. You can't just leave us now.
You'll be in good hands, and actually, you've already denied my request for reconsideration, so we'll have to go through with it.
Okay, I'll be there anyway, but not happy. Tuesday, 8:30 to 10, Community Corrections Board, Silverton Conference Room. That's followed at 10:30 to 11:30, a Marion County Housing Authority Board meeting, Silverton Conference Room. At noon on Tuesday, the 28th, 12 to 1, Public Safety Coordinating Council Steering Committee. And then next Wednesday at 9 o'clock, our next Board of Commissioners meeting. So, anything further to ask other than hope everybody does have a great Thanksgiving. It's always a special day for me. We gather up, probably do a little duck hunting in spite of this cold I have, but
Oh,
it's a
that'll help
fun
your
day.
cold.
Yeah, that'll cure it, I think.
Well, it is the beginning of the holiday season, and we're already scheduling our holiday greeting with CCTV, and it's just talking about whether we're doing the gift exchange where we steal or not. So it's going to be upon us. And
I thought we had that settled, and John comes back and he announces the old way. We've already chosen names. I think we're locked in.
yeah, I'm in Texas, so you're on your own.
So you're not going to help me this
No, I'm not.
All right. But anyway, it's a lot of fun times, a lot of times to think back. All right? Anything else special?
Oh, there's lots of things going on, but
We spent last week at AOC.
Right.
I don't enjoy it very much. I'll just say that publicly, but I think you do.
I thought it was a great conference. They
wonderful.
did a good job. And you went to the veterans
I did.
workshop. I thought that was very informative. It was nice to hear from someone doing it in a county that knows what he's doing, and I thought that was great.
They're happy with what we're doing, so I hope
Yep.
it works.
You gave us a big round of applause there. So.
Last chance, anything? Nope, you're just a hard-working rascal. So with that, we'll call this meeting adjourned.